Just some remarks. First, thank you very much for the honor and the joy to being invited to respond to Mary Evelyn's extraordinary, inspiring talk. I appreciate it since a long time, her really groundbreaking reflections about the complex relationship between religion and ecology, and I think you are leading in the world since a long time for that topic. I had the pleasure of meeting Mary Tucker and her husband John Grimm last year at Yale University, and I like to remember to that encounter. Through them, I also got to know the eco-theological writings of Tom Berry. I learned it from you. Second, the concept of ecological civilization, deepened by Confucian values, is a great achievement that combines spiritual, ethical, anthropological, cosmological, and considerations with a politically relevant concept in an exemplary way, thus preventing the latter from becoming an empty buzzword. So I think it's new for me to learn that it is such a strong program in all universities in China. That's really something special. And I think the term ecological civilization is very attractive. And my third remark, I agree that sustainability needs a holistic, a deepening through a philosophy of holistic approach of civilization, ethical, cultural, spiritual background. And because without that, it might be that sustainability is understood just as a technocentric or approach or a repaired shop. So I think the idea of ecological civilization is a very interesting term for a better understanding of sustainability. But in my understanding, they both are complementary, because I think the political leading and binding worldwide term is sustainability. There we have conferences and contracts about that. And I think ecological civilization is not the same. And we need the political binding background of the concept of sustainability. So it's not good to displace that and to say now we speak only about ecological civilization. And that might be my fourth remark. I think the idea of ecological civilization is more an eco-philosophical background, quite similar to the idea of integral ecology of Pope Francis. And I think there are many similarities. Both are holistic, systemic, both speak about a continuity of being between the human world and the non-human world. So I think that fits very good together, and I would suggest the Pope to learn something about the term, the idea of ecological civilization, and maybe from his side he could deepen it through understanding of Christian spirituality with Pope Francis, and I think that could enrich also the understanding of the term ecological society. But both terms are more a philosophical background, and they are not concepts of a better understanding of political power, political conflicts, a social theory of economics, and I think we need also that. So it's complementary, but not a substitution of that. And my fourth remark, Mary Evelyn, you pointed out the problematic relationship between ecological civilization and the theory of growth, especially the concept of the two mountains by President Xi Jinping. Yes, in your text you wrote it. Now you didn't speak about that, but I think it's interesting, the relationship between ecological civilization and the theory of growth. I cannot see that China really gets rid of the quite aggressive idea of growth. So I think it's quite important to say ecological civilization means something else. Or I think we need a theory of differentiation. I think maybe in some aspects we need growth. We need green growth. We need growth in for bioeconomy, so raw materials. But I think at the other side we need the idea of sufficiency. And I like the concept of Uwe Schneidewind about double decoupling. So we need more technology, innovation, green growth on the one hand, but on the other hand, our idea of sufficiency. So I think with that background, we can deepen that conflict, which is, as I have the impression, not really solved and sober discussed in China. And that is quite important for me. I think the Confucian virtue approach ethics is not a theory of economy and economic order. And we need that. For me, is very important the idea of eco-social market that uses the efficiency and freedom of markets, but defines quite strict eco-social framework for that. And I don't really trust the concept of socialism. So I think the idea of markets with framework is much more clear and sounded. And the sixth remark is I like your quotation of the Chinese Constitution of 2018. I think it's really a very interesting document with the idea of development of material, political, spiritual, social, ecological civilization in order to build China into, if I remember right, a prosperous, strong, democratic, civilized, harmonious, and beautiful socialist modern power. However, that seems for me like that it is such a constitutional rhetoric and not taken serious in reality, because I cannot see that China is really a democratic government. So it's they promise the harmony of all, but maybe that in ethics and also in pedagogic, in the context, we have to speak more about the conflicts of aim, about dilemma situations, about trade-offs. And I think it's important not to speak just about harmony and to promise that we can reach all at the same time, but to be realistic and to speak more about conflicts. And for that, seventh. Even if the many invocations of Confucian virtues and the distance of materialistic fixations, I'm not sure how seriously they are taken in the reality of Chinese society now. I was there in China together with 50 colleagues from LMU in Hangzhou, University of Zhejiang, and all spoke about Confucianism. But I had the impression in a quite folkloric and superficial manner, because I think the Confucian ethic from the tradition is an ethic of government, a doctrine of government of the rulers. It does not speak about political change. It's just a private virtue ethic. In the perspective of the rulers, to be quiet and not to think about political change. But I think we need that also. So I think you did it to combine Confucianism with more sound and other political or eco-philosophical and eco-social tradition. You spoke about Whitehead, Teilhard de Chardin. I like very much the late Martin Heidegger, how he speaks about the shepherd of the being as a habitude of care. And that's very crucial also for Pope Francis. So I think we need to add other philosophical traditions and as more political tradition to have real effect of that, and not to follow the idea of Confucian ethics just to speak about virtues and not to speak about political change. Eight, I think I would be interested to hear more about your impression how much the idea of ecological civilization and revival of traditions of Confucianism is a real force of everyday life in Chinese. So I suspect that it needs significant educational work to combine it with everyday life and in the context of the real conflicts in the in economy, in politics, in to be critically penetrated and linked with challenges of coping with everyday social, ecological life of modern times. I think you do a very good job in that direction, but I would like to hear more. And my last remark, I think the term robust anthropocosmic worldview might be the most interesting topos for the dialogue between Chinese, Confucian, and Christian European tradition. And I think we have also in the Christian tradition something, or the philosophical tradition of Europe, something like an anthropocosmic worldview. For me, is for example, important Max Scheler. 1928 about the man in cosmos. And I would like to learn more how to bring that in a dialogue. I think you spoke about the vitalism, so the dynamic vitalism of material force, the qi. But is there a special Chinese tradition of vitalism? Or did you just use the term from the German philosophy of the 19th century? Because in our philosophical tradition, we say it's gone, it's not really sound, or it's not really consistent. So I think for a revival of the idea of vitalism, we need more critical philosophical reflection. And that might be the most important term. I think it's very nice to hear terms about holistic vitalism, harmony term, but we need also a critical philosophical reflection to have really a sound idea which can change something and not just to produce buzzwords. Thank you.
That was superb. And I'm so grateful. I look forward to your sending me your remarks. It looks like you've written them, and I would very much value having them. And I'll just make, if I might, a few responses to these rich, thoughtful reflections. I'll start with the vitalism. Vitalism is ancient in China because this notion of qi. So it well precedes by millennia. Or even our Western reflections on it, although, we could pick up something in the Greek philosophers, I'm sure. But so vitalism is absolutely a critical term. I think it is being revived in certain aspects here in the West, a new materialism. Jane Bennett did a book on vital matter and so on. So there's an interesting dialogue. There's a whole dialogue about sentience, as we know, differentiated sentience in the world around us, etc. So I won't go there, but we are actually preparing a new website kind of on this topic of differentiated sentience from the science point of view, from nature writers' point of view, etc. So I think this revival is very important. That your point that it needs to be a philosophical discussion is absolutely critical. And you're also right that Confucian virtue ethics, while many people are keenly interested in that and so on, it's necessary, but certainly not sufficient. But I want to mention that there's a conference 2 weeks from now that I'll also participate online in China at Tsinghua University at their school of Marxism, which is much more dealing. There's maybe 60 participants. I don't know exactly, but it goes for several days and from various parts of the world, primarily, of course, China, but from all over the world. And many of them are speaking more to this eco-social, political dimension. And we went to that university this past summer and heard some of that discussion, which is, very realistic, pragmatic, and practically oriented. So we like to say principles and practicality, and they need, as you've said, to be drawn together. I think, and certainly the force in everyday life. That's where we keep going, to take a pulse on that. We're very, very interested in food systems, and there are 7,000 organic farms now in China because of the food security issues. We visited one outside of Beijing, a leader, a woman who came here to the US to study organic farming at a farm influenced by Thomas Berry, and she went back and founded these farms. It's an astonishing, widespread network of selling products as well as, growing fruits and vegetables and organically raised chickens, etc. So that's a very, very important topic, which we hope to do more on. Let's see. And certainly your point, and you're absolutely right. Harmony, it's a nice word and it can be used for ideology and so on. Frankly, the reason it's tempered, shall we say here, we can't talk about political change, you see. I mean, we're lucky to get in, we're lucky to get onto these university campuses, many of which are, you have to have super IDs to get even onto the campuses now. So you're completely right, but it's just not what we can do, you see, except in conversations with scholars over a Chinese dinner or something like that. But you're completely right. And as I said, tried to indicate this is, to give encouragement to the scholars and the students there who, by the way, let me give a statistic that's quite gripping in terms of their concerns for the future, ecologically and politically. But a very expert poll woman who was here at Yale last fall, and we work with her now at Beijing University. She has been in polls for many years on climate change, and 95% of the people in China get that climate change is the most critical issue of our moment. And the leader, the envoy to the COP conferences, is an astonishingly articulate, smart diplomat, but also very, very concerned about the future of China and the world. And he keeps indicating, I mean, this is probably the most important country for the future of the planet. When you take 1.3, almost 4 billion people, and you say the way they decide their future direction is going to influence everything. And as we began these conferences at Harvard, it was the view of our Asian scholars that China and India would reshape the world, and it has already. So that's simply by way of saying that can't talk about the politics, but the eco-social and certain politics are being talked about in Marxist circles, and I think that's quite healthy. The growth point, I love your point, green growth and sufficiency. That's such a powerful word. I'm going to probably put that into the next version of this and several of your points. Okay, and let me conclude by saying that absolutely sustainability is the word being used in conferences, and it's the lingua franca here in the West. My suggestion is certainly not to replace, but I like your term, the complementarity. I love your point about integral ecology. And I think we need a number of terms and ideas here because sustainability absolutely leaves out values. And it can be very technocratic in its philosophy, and sometimes only market-based instead of an ecological economics. So sustainability needs a broadening as well. But I love your point that we have complementary ideas emerging now. So I'll stop there, but you stimulated so much discussion in my mind, and I thank you for that.